Hey.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen and others. It is Friday. It is 20 p.m. UK time. And this is the Gin and Tonic Show. As always, we talk about Islam. We don't talk about much else. We focus on Islam. And that is what we do in a way that is, I think, not so bad. I think what we are doing is we are just decent people and we provide facts. We address the ideology. In other words, we go and we differentiate between what the ideology says and what the people do. So, in other words, we don't want to attack people. We don't want to attack Islam or anything. We just want to show a set of ideas, which is the ideology of Islam, and show people what the contents of those ideas are. Now, of course, if a Muslim lies and deceives, and if they're willfully ignorant, then I will come and I will expose this if they lie. To lie is to knowingly say something that is not true. And I will expose this. And if somebody tries to deceive it, I will say so as well. If somebody is willfully ignorant, not their fault, then I will educate them. And this is what we do. Right? So we don't go crazy. We don't do anything that is, that could be called hate or as an attack or anything like that. So this is us. So we try not to be divisive. We try and build bridges, and we often fail, but that's what we try and do. So we want to go and address Islam using facts, reality, and reasoning. We categorically condemn any abuse, oppression, slavery, violence, misogyny, anything like that. And on the other hand, we go and embrace free speech and criticism, factual and constructive criticism. So if anybody wants to go and correct us or comment or something, there's three ways to do that. One is to go and watch the live show, which is on YouTube. You can watch it there. And then if you are not there for the live show, you can watch it later in one of the videos. And if you want to, you come here at 8 o'clock p.m. on UK time and contact me in the chat. You write there, I am today Gin and Tonic. So just say Gin and Tonic show. Then this will be highlighted. And then I say, see this. And then we can go and we get you on the show. And then we can chat here on the show together with you. So open microphone, no censorship. Anybody who wants to can come and join us. Don't go to Patreon. Don't go to PayPal. Don't pay us any money. Just give us your love, attention, and tell people about this. That's all we do. It's totally free. There's nothing here that we are begging for, nothing. So what we're doing is we let the Quran speak. Okay, we don't go and we don't have scholars and things like that telling us what to do and what to say. That's not something that we do. So we read the Quran. So and I'm very grateful that Rob has always got his ears on the ground. And he contacted Fay and said, listen, can you come on and explain a little bit about yourself? And she said, okay, on the 13th. And I've been in contact with her. Now, the thing is that she is not here yet. I do not know why. Let me just go and see if there's any message from her that she sent us. Why not? No. Okay. She says that she's going to be here. I sent her the link, so all she has to do is click on the link and she will be in the show. No problem. But she has not done so far. So I'm very sorry that at the moment, I will just have to say, okay, sorry, we will have to wait. And as soon as she's here, I will let you know. All right. Then what we have is we have Thunderous on the panel. Rob will be a bit late today. That's why Thunderous, how are you doing? How was the last week?
I'm fine, thank you, everybody. Welcome to the show, and I'm looking forward to.
Can you crank up the volume a bit?
I don't know if I can crack up the volume. Is that any better?
Not really.
Okay, let me have a look at the settings. I can't crack it up any more than what it already is.
Oh, strange.
These are my normal settings, though, so I haven't made any adjustments.
All right, then maybe it's me. I don't know. Oh, so Beach says she can hear you fine, so then it must be on my side. Then I need to crank up my volume on the headphones, which are also set to normal, and the system sounds are normal, but we'll never know. Okay. No, I'm not going to sing. Tell Fay hi. So Steve McRae, okay, will do. Thank you. Sorry, my man. Then what, is she going to be on your show next or what? So then let us know when, and then let me know when, and then I will also put this on the on the grapevine, and then we can all benefit from this, because I think the more people we have distributing or conveying the message of, well, this is Islam, this is what it's all about, and this is why we don't want it. This is why I do not want to live under Sharia. And then we can explain it using facts. There were a couple of discussions now. One was quite telling with this clown, Nadir Ahmed, who we've also had on the show here, who has tried to talk to me about embryology. And he now started talking to Aaron Ram. And that was quite funny. I mean, the way this guy tapped on his round, I mean, is there something wrong in the Quran? No, there's nothing wrong in the Quran. It's all a scientific miracle. Okay. Well, what about this? Well, that could be wrong, but it's not. It's a miracle. Okay, so the moon was split. No, but that's a miracle. So is there anything that you could tell us? No, it's a miracle. So as soon as you show him something that is a mistake in the Quran, he automatically goes, well, it's a miracle, and that's why it can't be a mistake. It's too funny.
I watched that earlier on today, the Deer versus Aaron Rod discussion, and what I don't quite understand is, why does he keep repeating himself? It's what we said last week, where it's almost like it's sent out to all Muslim amateur debaters like a portfolio of what to say and how to debate the embryology in the Quran. It's the same verbatim, no matter who you're listening to. But with Nadir, what I don't understand is, why does he keep? It's like he's just going from one atheist or challenger of Islam to another, seeing where he can gain the most traction, failing miserably every time. What I don't understand is, why not just stop? Why continue?
Exactly. Well, this is the thing, and he actually pays people now that they will go and talk to him. I mean, it's not a debate or anything. It's just him lying and deceiving and blah blah blah, and then somebody else telling him, "Listen, you're lying," and there's no point in doing that, because we've already addressed this. Everybody knows that what Keith Moore said about embryology is not something that and anyone else will sort of support. No other person, and I mean, there is no competition about who is the best and most prestigious embryologist on this planet. And yet he says, and he continues to say, that Keith Moore is the most prestigious and most highly awarded embryologist, when there is no such thing. And this is quite funny, because I've spoken to people now and they say, well, yes, I have to agree, there is no such thing as embryology in the Quran. And this is where people are now. So what is the point talking about embryology when it's not in the Quran? Because embryology is not just, the nutfa and the alaka.
I think with the embryology in the Quran, I refer to it as the Richard Nixon Vietnam War complex. By that I mean, by the time that Richard Nixon came into office in America, the Vietnam War had already started. I think it's probably about 2 years into the Vietnam War, but it already had cost so many lives, and already there had been so much investment by the military-industrial complex of America in Vietnam. To pull out of the war now would have meant every soldier that died previously, it was worthless and pointless. So the only thing you can do then is to continue the war and continue it to its bitter end, no matter what the conclusion is. Otherwise, everything else would have been a loss and in vain. And I think that's the same thing I see with embryology in Islam now. they've got so deeply entrenched in this situation, they can't pull out. They've got to carry on fighting the fight now. Otherwise, in effect, they'll have to concede and say that everything, every argument, and every line of reasoning they've used thus far has all been in vain. It's all been a fraud. We know it's a fraud anyway, but it's having them to admit that it's been a fraud is where we're at now.
Yeah, but the funny thing is they can't shut up. This is what astonishes me so much, because they know by now they're embarrassing themselves, and they know that whatever they bring up has been refuted, is already debunked. There is nothing real about it. They know that it's a mistake in the Quran, but they will not shut up. This is the funny thing. I don't understand why somebody who knows something doesn't work will still try and apply it and hope for a different outcome. That's illogical for me.
I totally hear what you're saying there, but what other argument does Islam have? What other way is there for Islam to try and attempt to defend itself? It can't defend itself from a historical point of view, because there's no history in the Quran that secular history can verify. It can't argue morally, because there's no morality in the Bible, in the Quran. It can't. It just seems that science, or the pseudo-scientific claptrap that's found in the Quran, is the only line of defense to defend Islam that it has. So it has nowhere else to go. So when you're saying or asking why do they continue? If you're a Muslim, where would you go to try and defend your faith with Islam, if that's all you got? What else do you have to defend?
All right, I would either find something else.
Yeah, you can't even argue and defend the fact whether Muhammad existed or not.
Well, Christians can't do that with Jesus, yet they all believe that Jesus existed. But with Muhammad, it's the same problem. But we can't do is we can't just carry on, saying something that we know already is wrong. Now, the funny thing is that as a Muslim, I would try and find something different than science, because I would know by now that science does not work, because we have the age of the internet, and in the age of the internet, we can very quickly verify things. And that is why all these claims don't work, because we are able to verify them, and yet they do it again and again.
But just like I just said, those stops, where else would they go? Where else
I would go somewhere else. I would go to the spiritual side. I would go and say, well, listen, here we have something that will give you inner peace, that will give you, a connection, a common, something like a common denominator with all other Muslims on the planet. And this is true. Wherever they go, they already have a mosque. They already have somewhere to go. They have a social life. They have all this environment which other people don't have. So I would go and concentrate on that. But the point is, and this is the biggest problem, I think Simon is right, it's the money. Because unfortunately, Islam is linked with money. All right. There is no way that you can get money out of Islam. And this is the big problem, that the people like Ali Dawa, I mean, he's really dumb, right? And he absolutely has nothing. But because he is so dumb, he is able to be popular. And this is the thing, that he makes popular comments which makes other Muslims feel good. And because it is so intrinsically linked with money, they go and donate money to him, so that he becomes a professional Muslim and does nothing else except now propagate Islam using stupid, illogical, whatever things, arguments or whatever you want to call them. And that is it. And it's true. If he were to stop, I mean, somebody like Hamza says, he's been doing this for the last, 15, 20 years. Without Islam, he would be unemployed. He would be homeless, living on the street, because he doesn't know how to do anything. He doesn't have the brains to grasp anything. He says now he's got a PhD or something. I mean, come on, please. I can't believe that. Anyway, but if he has, okay, kudos to him. Great. He's managed to all right, I'm not going to make any allegations, but I've known him for like 10 years, and I know that all he does is lie. It's the same as with this Boma guy. He can't help himself. He has to lie. There is nothing else that he can do. And he knows full well that his statements are wrong. He knows I mean, he's been told, he's been schooled, he's been educated on humans being made from water. The Quran says from water. There is no other way that you can translate it. From water. And he will still insist that this is correct. I don't understand this.
When you've got a potential 1.5 billion customer base, that is,
yeah, that's the point. Exactly.
Exactly. So, and you know that if they are Muslims, they're not going to argue any line of reasoning. It's what we discussed several years ago, or several months ago, rather, about debates. When you go and listen to a debate, you're not there to listen intellectually or critically to the arguments or the counter argument. You're there only to go and support your man in the argument. It doesn't matter how many Muslims are sitting there listening to Nadir. They're not there to listen to Aaron Ra or a Christian or a Jew argue against him. They're there just to listen to Nadir. Nadir knows that. Nadir knows that all his Muslims, you got 100, let's say there's 100 Muslims listening to the discussion. He knows 99.9% of them are not going to be critical in their observation, the way that Nadir is counter-arguing the point of the Quran. They're there to support, and they'll put it down to the ignorance of the opposing argument, that they don't understand what Nadir is saying. Nadir relies on that. In fact, it's a tried and tested formula. Goes all the way back to Ahmadiyyat. I was brought up on Ahmadiyyat. This is why I say there must be some kind of tract or some kind of portfolio that they hand around to each other. I'm listening to the same arguments I've been listening to for the past 35, 40 years. It's not changed.
But he was a really dishonest prick.
Oh, of course, they relied on the ignorance of the audience, because most of the audience probably couldn't understand some of the languages that were being spoken. Second of all, they relied on the fact that they weren't going to go and, let's say they were arguing about the Guru Granth Sahib, not Guru Granth Sahib, let's say it was the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita. They knew the members of the audience wouldn't go to the Bhagavad Gita to check out to see if those verses or those points were actually in those books. That's what they're relying on. And it's a technique that Muhammad did. We're reading in the Quran now, as we're going through it, about Muhammad telling the Jews this and the Christians that. And he knew that those points weren't in the book. They're not in the book. That's why the Jews were laughing at him. He was relying on the ignorance. And it's the same technique today.
And this is the thing, that what Nadir Ahmed was doing is what you're saying. I mean, he wasn't trying to make a point. He wasn't trying to make anything intellectual. He was trying to make the gotchas. Okay, he was trying to catch Aaron out, saying something that Aaron would never normally say. But Aaron, he doesn't know these things. He doesn't know how to talk to Islam apologists, and he doesn't have the experience. And neither does the guy. I mean, the guy who was with him is Arabic speaking, sure. But this is standard Arabic, modern standard Arabic, not Quranic Arabic. So to go and argue these cases against somebody like Nadir Ahmed, who doesn't speak Arabic, he has no clue what it is. So, this is the point of having an Arabic-speaking person there, is just to counter any kind of claim that Nadir Ahmed will come up and say, well, this is an Arabic and you need to speak Arabic, because he will bullshit you. The same way as Sources tried to bullshit Professor Woodboy. So when he said, well, do you want to write down the equations? And Sources said, yeah, sure, I can do that. But let's discuss. And then Woodboy said, no, come on, here. This is the marker. Go and write it on the board. And then Sources had to back down. But up until then, he will bullshit. And he will do so with confidence. And that's exactly the point. The people who are listening to him have no clue what is going on, but they react to the tone of confidence and that he is going up against a known authority. And he's cheeky. And that's all he has. This is the same with Nadir Ahmed. He's always like, okay, we can talk about that later in the Q&A or something. No, you have just lost your point. Somebody has just shown you that you are wrong. And there is no point in now going and saying, well, let's talk about this later. It's just a cop-out to not admit that he's been had. So.
But also, I think you've also got to look at it from another point of view as well. Is that when you look at the history of Muslim debaters, whatever angle that they're trying to debate Islam with, the testimony is the opponent. That's for me where it's always been. look at the opponent that they pick to have the debate with. Most people are inexperienced, or they're not debaters. They may have a little bit of an expertise in a certain field. Maybe, let's say, for argument's sake, a Muslim picks a Jew to argue the Song of Solomon, and they're going to argue in the Hebrew language about what that the phonic fallacy of Muhammadim and Muhammadin
is there. Yeah.
right? They will pick a Hebrew speaker that is not an experienced debater. It's a different thing. A debate, you have rules and regulations. You set what the standard of the debate is going to be. A person that's never debated before, though may sign up to that, is still hasn't got the experience of entering the debate and how it works, how to manipulate the audience, how to manipulate the argument, how to direct the argument, how to, if you like, cause a diversion in the discussion. Muslims are experienced that, and they've got that experience from debating people that don't have the experience of doing that. And the testament is, you name me one person from Ahmad Didat to Faker Knight to Useless Estes or Nadia, anybody that any Muslim has debated that's actually been a credible, intelligent, articulate person. The only person I can think of that a Muslim's ever challenged that have argued, for instance, would be someone like David Wood.
No, but Zakir Naik went against a Christian apologist as well.
Sorry?
Zakir Naik went up against a Christian apologist.
Which one was that? Which one?
William Campbell. Was it Campbell? I can't remember who.
He's an author. That's the point. He's an author, not a debater. That's the point I'm trying to make. And it's the same with Ahmad Didat. They don't debate people who are actually experienced debaters. They just argue with people that don't have the experience, or they come from another field that is totally irrelevant, having a live discussion. So it looks like to the Muslim audience that listen there to support their man, wow, our Muslim debater, he's really winning, he's really good. Well, the fact of the matter is, you could liken it to Mike Tyson's first 20 fights. Who did he really fight in his first 20 fights when he became a world champion? Anybody who knows anything about boxing would know that Mike Tyson really didn't have much in the way of any severe or critical or serious opposition until he started fighting people like Razor Ruddock, or when he fought Lennox Lewis or Evander Holyfield. When he came against proper boxers, he came unstuck. That's the same thing with a Muslim debater. They handpick their fights, but when they come against someone serious, they come unstuck.
Well, that's right. And the other tactic that I noticed is that what this Ahmed guy does is what he did with me as well. That I said, no, I don't want a debate. I want a discussion. I just want to have a chat with you. Let's talk about embryology. Let's see what you can bring to the table, because I already schooled him on this barrier in the water thing. So I showed him that this is a mistake of the Quran. I showed him that this is wrong. And in the end, he had to run away with the tail behind, between his legs. Now he comes back and he says, well, what do you want to talk about? I said, well, let's try embryology. And he says, okay, cool. But then what he does is he says, well, now you have had your 2 minutes, because I can explain it in 3, but he can cause a fire in 2 minutes, but I need 4 to put it out.
Yes.
And this is where he is going and trying to limit the time, because he can quickly, light 5 fires, and I'm unable to extinguish them in that short amount of time, because I need to explain everything.
And also as well, when you listen to the debate, like the same old well-beaten trap, your default for a Muslim debater is what words mean in Arabic. It could mean this, it could mean that. The word for this can also mean water as well. And when you've not got the experience of speaking in Arabic, or I don't call it classical Arabic because there's no such thing. It's Qurayshi Arabic. Let's be honest here. It's Qurayshi Arabic. And if you don't have that experience, then it's almost like they take control then, because they may have some more experience of the language than you do.
Exactly. This is why I turn it around, and this is what I did with Boma. He couldn't handle this. He ran away, because I say, well, you tell me what it says in the Quran. Tell me in the Quran where it says this and this. Then it's not me saying this is what the Quran says, and then they can, say, yeah, but you don't speak the language, you don't know what they're. I'm saying, okay, you are the Muslim, you tell me what the Quran says, and then we can talk about it. And this totally, this throws them off completely. They don't know what the fuck to do with this. And this is much nicer, much better idea to not go there with a preconceived idea, but to ask, to just to provide the answers and not make the claims. Much easier.
And then things you say there, let's have a sit there and have a nice discussion. The thing that you have with a nice discussion is you can pretty much, because there's no rules or regulations of a nice discussion, you can pretty much hold your own in your own way, in your own time. Whereas when you enter a debate, there are rules and regulations and things that you are tied down to. And normally they're in favor of the Muslim because he's the one who set the
This is why Nadia was screaming, "Oh, it's my 2 minutes, it's my 2 minutes." And we never said anything about 2 minutes. So, okay, well, we have Fay here now. And this picture of me is not Mohammed or anybody. This is just me. Okay, this is just me. So there we go. Hello, Fay. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show.
Hi, thank you so much for waiting for me since I was caught in so much traffic. I literally came late from work by like 3 hours. It was mental. But I'm here now.
Well, it wasn't mental because it was physical. If it had been mental, you would have been here ahead of time, wouldn't you?
Is this the kind of show it's going to be? Is this
That's
what
the way
I
it's
signed
going to be. Great, brilliant, super. Now, before I go and say something that is totally wrong, because I've only got your intro, why don't you tell us what you are all about, what you are going to talk to us about, and where you come on and why you're here?
Okay, I would like to make one correction. I'm not
Sure.
I'm not ex-Bangladeshi. I don't know how I could be ex-Bangladeshi.
So where do I get this from?
Sorry?
Oh, then I don't know where I got this from. Sorry.
That's fine. I mean, nobody guesses me as Bangladeshi anyway, so it's not too big a problem. But what I do is that I consider myself an ex-Muslim activist. I talk a lot about my experience being an ex-Muslim, facing ostracism from my family and from the wider Muslim community, be that local to me or through Twitter and social media. And I want to slowly normalize the experience of being an ex-Muslim so that no one has to go through the same thing that I did, just to simply think a different way.
Okay. How long have you been doing this?
So I've only been doing this since October of last year because that's the moment that I was openly ex-Muslim. I've been I've been ex-Muslim since 2017, but I was closeted until last year.
All right, this is the interesting part, because when I saw that, all possible alarm bells went off. How is it that somebody is a Muslim, fully, indoctrinated, part of the system, in the whole routine, and then somebody has doubts and can't do anything about it? What is that? What is that feeling? Can you describe that?
I spoke about this recently, but the feeling is as though you're doomed. The feeling is as though this was chosen for you and there's no way out.
Sorry, Fay, just so you know who I am. My name is Thunderous. I'm an ex-Muslim from a Pakistani background. So
okay.
Okay, just so you know, you're not the only ex-Muslim on the show tonight.
Okay. Lovely.
Okay, but now, if you look back, what do you tell people? Okay, for me, this seems to be a huge cliff where you are standing and you're saying, okay, there's something wrong here. Something is really, really wrong, but I cannot go and drop, because if I go one step forward, I'm going to go 1 kilometer vertical down. I cannot do that. What is it that makes you take that step anyway and then realize, no, there is no cliff? there's a bridge that takes you to the other side. This realization. What makes you take that step anyway?
I think when I was a closeted Muslim, the reason why I was closeted for so long was because I really wanted custody of my siblings.
Okay.
So I had to keep the peace with my family while I was going through that process. But by October of 2018, I had realized that that was not a reality that I could foresee while I was still living with family with all the restrictions they put on me because I was essentially still a Muslim, and according to them, and as far as they knew. But the reason I guess why I decided instead of to be a quiet ex-Muslim, ostracized by my family, was that I had represented Islam for such a long time. And even though I'm not that old, I'm 24 years old, but I feel as though I represented Islam for a really long time. I brought, Salafi Islam to my family. And, realizing that it was untrue, I felt as though I had been deceived, but also I had been deceiving other people. I wanted to clear the air and tell people that it's okay to, be one way and then change to a different way, and that's something that should be accepted rather than shunned, absolutely entirely. Especially in countries where it's completely unacceptable to the point where your life is threatened. It's
Well, yeah.
it's
The people who are listening, what do you tell them? What is it? What is the methodology? What is it that you did to come out, that you are happy at least?
What was the methodology of me leaving Islam?
And letting others know.
The methodology was essentially having nothing to lose, because at that point I had nothing. I had no financial support. I had no family. I had nothing. So I thought if I have nothing, the only way is up. So
So what did you do?
I recorded a 45-minute video talking about how I'm the black sheep of my family, and I felt as though it was completely undeserved. Simply because I didn't want to live with my abusive father. I didn't want to get married to the man they chose for me, and I didn't want to be a Muslim.
Stops. Can I just ask? Have you got a preset number of questions already scripted out, or is it okay for me to chime in every now and again?
Yeah, no, sure. No. This is from the top of my head. These are things that interest me, which I would imagine will also interest others.
What you're saying there, Fay, I can totally relate to. I mean, one of the reasons that there are many, but one of the reasons that I hated or despised Islam, because even though you're from a Bengali background and myself from a Pakistani background, that what people don't seem to understand sometimes is that the culture can be exactly the same, or very similar.
Yeah.
The irony being that the Pakistanis and the Bengalis don't actually get on with each other, even though it's supposed to be one brotherhood. You would think that they'd have unity, but the truth of the matter is far from that. There is a contempt between the two, and particularly between. It's almost like how can I put it? Like the Indian caste system. The Bengali seem lower than the Pakistani, whereas the Arab is sort of like the head, or the Brahmin caste, the top of the tree, so to speak. But what you're saying there about arranged marriage, not wanting to be married to, I totally get that. It was one of the contempts that I had for the culture as well. That what I personally perceived was, how can a person marry somebody they don't love or they don't know? Surely what's taking place on the wedding night is rape. She does not want him inside her any more than he wants to be inside her. Forgive me if I'm sounding a bit crass. But that would be the lifestyle and the life course, and you can see that. I mean, I don't know if you've had this experience where you can actually see that in the community where people are stuck in relationships that they don't want to be in.
Oh,
and it's
absolutely.
It's partly the culture, but partly the religion as well.
From what I never understood about arranged marriage, obviously I kind of accepted it as a Muslim, but coming out of Islam, the one thing that I didn't understand was that for my whole life I was never allowed to, be around boys or talk to boys or even really know what they were, but I was supposed to marry this complete stranger that my family just assumed was a good person.
Yeah.
And that's such a bizarre thing, because I surely getting to know someone and then slowly developing a relationship makes way more sense than just marrying a stranger and being committed to that person for as long as possible because of the toxicity of our cultures.
Yes. And considering that's the most important person you're ever going to have in your life is your marriage partner. Not even your children are going to be more important than your marriage partner, because the children will fly and leave home and set up their own families, but you're with your marriage partner until you die or until they die. Um,
Yeah.
um, as you were growing up, when I was growing up, I could sense Islam was wrong. It was sort of like intuitive. There was something wrong about this religion and Muhammad and the Quran and some of the teachings that they have. Was it a gradual thing for you, or was it a certain thing or a certain two or three things that you put together and you thought, no, this is wrong?
I was a fundamentalist because I had joined the Salafi movement quite young. I was about 14 when I started becoming more practicing, leaving all the madhabs, leaving all the jamaats, and just following Quran and Sunnah. And I had become quite devout, and my mentality was that this was from God, and everything God does is justified because it's from God. There's no questioning it. But as I grew up and I met new people outside of, the Muslim Salafi bubble, I began to question why it was that God created so many disbelievers, knowingly, because he knew everyone's fate. And a lot of people will sit back, a lot of Muslims will sit back and say, oh, well, God still gave them a free will. I'm not questioning that about Islam. But I am questioning the fact that God knew that 90% of the creation, his free-willed creation, were going to end up in a burning pit of fire for eternity. He knew that.
Yeah, that's logics. That's what kills it.
And
So,
I couldn't understand it, and for a long time I kind of ignored it and thought, well, I'm on the right path, so it's okay. And then later down the line, when my mother had passed away and my father was just growing more and more abusive, I was in a position where I was thinking, okay, I can kind of understand Allah like dooming all these believers, but these disbelievers, sorry, but why is it that me, a devout Muslim, why is he putting me in a position where I have to go against my own father, which is such a huge sin in Islam?
Wow.
And
How old were you then?
Sorry?
How old were you then?
I was 21, 20.
Wow. Okay.
And
But
it
you
kind
were
of,
already full age, so you could make your own decisions. This is the point.
yeah.
Okay.
So that thought kind of broke me, because I could not fathom why, Allah would make me a devout person and then first of all, give me these doubts. And second of all, put me in a position where I had to directly disobey his commands. Like I couldn't understand that. And I kind of let go of him from that moment. I still wandered around, I still prayed aimlessly, fasted aimlessly, thinking that I'm just doomed. And that feeling where you just think like, oh, Allah just made you to burn in hell later in life, like after you die. That feeling, just carrying that around for a year, that was the worst. I just wanted it to all be over. There was no point to my life at that point.
Wow. Okay, now Thunder's jumped the gun a bit, because I was more trying to establish where you were. So you come from a Muslim household and you were indoctrinated as a child. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then you grew up and you became a fundamentalist, and this is amazing. You became a Salafi, and then from there you realized that something was wrong, because this God that everybody worships does something not to the non-believers, which is according to the Quran totally acceptable, but now to believers as well when it comes to their own father. And this triggered something in you where you said, no, there's something wrong here. If I apply the logical thinking here, that this God, number one, is supposed to be merciful, is supposed to be just, is supposed to be blah, 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 all the other things. And that's when you decided, I'm going to make a long video explaining this. Now, what is it that you put into this video? Do you think that, because I'm trying to think through the eyes now of a young Muslim who is in the same situation, he realizes there's something wrong. And now you come along and you say, well, you know, best not to come out to your parents when you can't, when you are depending on them. But then when there is no other way, there is no way, the only way that you can do now is to leave, and anyway is up. What do you put in a video like that? What kind of a message do you bring across? Yes, I am the black sheep. Do you take the blame, or are you offensive? Are you, you know, more assertive in this video? What do you do? What do you tell people?
Okay, so to briefly summarize my, indoctrination, I originally was part of the Tabligh Jamaat because my father had joined and we had gone to that mosque. And I was also enrolled into an Islamic school that was run under the Tabligh Jamaat. And the Tabligh Jamaat, or Deobandis in India, they're quite conservative, but they're not quite as extreme as the Salafi movement. It was during during the years of me being like 13 or 14, I became more exposed to speakers who were slightly more radical, who were calling for, this revival of the Quran and Sunnah, who were like disagreeing with bid'ah or innovations. I was listening to a lot of Saudi sheikhs. At that point, my Arabic understanding was quite good, so I was also listening to Friday khutbahs from Saudi. And I was a big follower of a very radical Islamic sheikh called Anwar al-Awlaki. He used to resonate with me so much as a fundamentalist teenager who just romanticized this idea of like Islamic dominance over the world. So that was more or less the process of my indoctrination. But as I got older and I started seeing the world, because I also grew up in the UK, I grew up in a fairly diverse society. I became exposed to non-believers. I became exposed to different sects of Islam. I became exposed to, different sexualities, all forms of people. And it put me in a headspace of, okay, when Allah was talking about the disbelievers and I had no, reference of what that was, I was okay with it. But now this seems bizarrely sadistic for Allah to create all of these people, and essentially doom them. But I ignored that for a really long time because I was a Muslim and I thought I was chosen. And I think in that way I was very, very selfish, but also I was very, very terrified of the possibility of hell. And me burning in it. So I didn't want to question. I didn't want to fall out of the fold, in a sense. So I just said, my Allahu A'lams, and I went on with my life. But as I turned 18, my mother had health complications. She passed away, didn't shake my faith. I had to raise 5 of my siblings, didn't shake my faith. I had to witness many things that my family put me through that I did not, I do not put on Islam. I don't think that Islam is responsible for it, but that did not shake my faith in the slightest. I did all my prayers. I did all my fasts. I, kept good rapport with other Muslims. It was, my breaking point was when my father had sadistically laughed at a woman who had tried to commit suicide in our house, and the thought in my head was like a gunshot. How am I supposed to be okay with this? How am I supposed to be okay with this as a human being, let alone as your daughter, when you are so. And he was also very, very self-righteous of the fact that he was a good Muslim. He would go to the masjid all the time. He would give food at the masjid. He would pray at the masjid. He had friends from the masjid. The sheikh would validate all his ideas, and he was absolutely crazy, some of the things that he would say and do. and these people would just validate him because they believed him to be a pious, righteous, good person. But when this happened, when I saw this complete lack of empathy, even on a basic human level, for another person, a person that he was married to, it just did not add up for me. And selfishly, I thought I could understand Allah doing this to non-believers, but why is He doing this to me?
And you didn't go the route of this is a test.
No, because I had thought that for the last 2 or 3 years.
So you
knew
put it
was
behind you.
test.
Okay. All
So
right.
I was aware of that it was a test, but why was it this test where I had to choose between committing such a grave sin of reporting my father, leaving him because he was a maniac? Why did I have to do that in the name of God? It didn't make any sense to me, and I just felt as though I was set up to fail. And in terms of creating a video talking about all of this, the initial video that I released was simply about the injustice that my family had put me through, simply because I wanted to get away from an abusive figure. They blamed many, many things on me that I thought were unfair. They blamed the fact that my siblings had to stay with my dad and I wasn't looking after them, on me, even though they were taken away from me. I had volunteered to take them with me, but they didn't want them with me because I was misguided. They blamed so many different things on me, and I just wanted to express that in a video. At that point, I did not think my reason for leaving Islam was valid because it was a very emotional reason. And I didn't think it was like, it wasn't scientifically grounded, it wasn't historically grounded, it wasn't moralistically grounded. It was just, I don't like the idea of worshipping a cruel God. Like, cruel not only to the people who don't follow him, but cruel also to the people who do.
Wow. So is this for you leaving Islam, or is this still a sort of an expression of frustration?
I think at that point, last year, I think in 2017, I was still very frustrated with Islam. I hadn't fully left because I was still doing my prayers and things. But I had a lot of frustrations, and I didn't really understand how someone could live without God. Even though I was aware of people who did, I didn't understand how that was possible. So I started looking, because I thought, if I'm doomed, I might as well enjoy my time here. And so I started looking into atheist content. I started looking into ex-Muslim content, although that took me a very long time to look at ex-Muslim content. And I started listening to these people who were talking about, living without God, and how, the Quran is flawed, and how, it's scientifically flawed. But because I went to an Islamic school and the education wasn't perfect, I'm not very scientifically literate. So none of that stuff really mattered to me before. So I think where it really clicked with me was when I started listening to other Salafis who'd left Islam, because it didn't really work for me when Sufis left Islam, didn't really work for me when Shias left Islam, because they weren't, in my brain, they weren't Muslims to begin with, so it didn't count. But when I started listening to fundamentalists leaving Islam and their reasons for leaving, and the pain that they experienced also, like the emotional pain of leaving God, it really resonated with me, and I thought, maybe, there's still something that I can make of this. I don't have to feel as though I'm doomed. I don't have to live in this nihilistic way where I'm just waiting to die and, face my punishment. And that really brought me out of it.
And was there such a thing as an actual tipping point?
What do you mean?
Well, for me, it sounds as though this grew and grew gradually.
Yeah.
Was there anything that set it off, or was it just that was the straw that broke the camel's back? Was there an incident, or was there anything specific?
Oh, the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that I had to go against my dad, because I did not foresee that happening.
Okay.
That,
What
that's what
what is
goes
what is missing? What do you think we should be doing more of to convince those people who don't get the message? Because for me, what is interesting that you said, well, hang on, if Shias come out, it doesn't interest me. They're not Muslim. Same with Sufis. But what resonates with me is my group, my in crowd. If they now decide to leave and abandon and jump ship, then this has an impact. So to me, clearly, there's something that is missing. So what do you think is missing in the messages that we bring out?
I think that people who are indoctrinated or follow this very, very fundamental, very rigid way of life, it's very difficult for them to see another side. I think that it's really important to start conversations with them. Like maybe not to, not to come to an agreement, not to come to compromises, but simply conversation, because some of them are so unaware of the world around them. I can say for a fact that while I was a Salafi, I did not know what a gay person was. Like I did not know what they were, how they were, who they were. Because to me, I was like, this is in my brain, as someone who was a fundamentalist Muslim and believed that homosexuality was wrong, I could not understand why a person would choose to do that.
Okay. Wow.
Plain and simple. So me being in my bubble, I did not understand that this is a person who has no mode of choice here. It's just how they are. And I didn't know what that was. It wasn't until I went out and I found a gay person and asked them, "Hey, what are you?" that I realized what they were. It's so important for me and people who are like me to go out and actually realize that there are other people in the world who aren't others. And Islam, especially fundamentalist Islam or Islamism, as some people call it, it has a very interesting way of otherizing people, otherizing disbelievers, otherizing Muslims from other sects, otherizing sinners, and what they would call fasiqs or whatever. Salafi Islam has a really, really toxic way of otherizing people. And I think that many Salafi Muslims, even though they may be well intentioned in everything they do, they are completely unaware of the world around them and how people really are. And I think it's really, really important to start conversations with them and talk to them on an empathetic human level and make them understand that for example, what I go through is just as bad as anything they go through.
Wow.
And
That's interesting.
And I also think because like when I was a Salafi, as I said, I was completely selfish because I thought it was deserved to some degree for non-believers. But as soon
Yeah,
as
because
it
you
was,
were right. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and the other thing is, I think once Salafis come out of Islam and they stop believing, or they kind of just mellow out, because as many Salafis do, because Salafi Islam is really intense.
But
They
in
don't.
what way? What are you taught as a Salafi Muslim? What is the difference?
You're essentially living a 7th century life in the 21st century.
Okay. Do you know the Human Rights Declaration of Islam?
No.
Because this is what I imagine it to be. What is the message that is so different? Is it only the misogyny? Is it only the violence? Is it only this sectarian, this partisanship that you have to say, well, we are the best and we are better than everybody else? It's just a matter of convincing them because they're blind, they don't see it? Or is it really factual arguments, bit by bit, everyday things?
So it's all of that. So Salafis, it is literally all of that.
Wow.
Believe that in Islam there will be 73 sects, and they are the only sect that will be saved because they stuck to the way of the Prophet and the Salaf Salihin, or the rightly guided people, the Sahabas. They think that they are the only sect out of 73 sects that will emerge from Islam to be saved. And the reason for them being saved is that they do not progress in religion in the slightest. They remain misogynistic, they remain homophobic, they remain 7th century warlords, essentially.
Wow.
They remain
Did
that
you learn Arabic? Did you learn the language?
Arabic. I understand it. I haven't practiced it in a while, but I studied it for 5 years and I understand it to a degree.
Wow. Now, what you are saying is, have you heard of street epistemology?
No.
This is exactly what you are describing, that you have somebody who talks to you, who doesn't try and bring arguments, who doesn't try and convince you of anything. It's just probing into what it is, what you are thinking, and why you are thinking this, and why this makes you believe what you believe. And I think, okay, a lot of people have told me that this is it works like a juju, we say, like a dream. It is the most efficient way of getting somebody to think, to contemplate, to ponder over why they believe this. And this, I think, this is what you are confirming now once again, that it's no use telling people, well, the science is wrong and the Quran is full of mistakes, because you have this layer of Teflon on you that everything like that just glides off. But
yeah,
making you think about that, I think that is what is the difference.
I think it's all well and good to tell people that there's, scientific errors in the Quran, that there's, Muhammad was an inherently immoral person. I think that's all well and good, but I also think that fundamental Islam, literalist Islam, Islamism is one of the most dangerous factions of Islam simply by how tribalistic it is. And because how much they fear fire, to the extent that they will put, they will put basic human courtesy aside to save other people from hell. Like, they will tell you. I have an Ahmadi friend who has told me that religious friends that she knows, like our mutual friends, will tell her that she is going to burn in hell because she is an Ahmadi. And I find that so despicable, because I could never imagine saying that to someone, even as a Salafi. And it makes me feel as though this is something that needs to be addressed. Like, Salafis aren't going to listen to science. They're not going to listen to, moral principles outside the boundaries of the Quran, because for them, that is the moral principle. It's objective for them, that it's okay for them to marry a 6-year-old. It's okay, because for whatever reason, because the Prophet did it, so it's okay. And I really do think that if we are going to change the hearts and minds of people who are so deeply indoctrinated into a thing that makes them behave really, really animalistically, you need to reach them through a means of empathy and understanding.
Okay, not confrontative.
No, I don't think that works very well, because they're already confrontative. They're already repressed and pent up. It's attacking them aggressively. It's just going to bring out more aggression. So I do think, and I've kind of experienced this in the last few months. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but myself and a few other ex-Muslims, including Armin Navabi, we had gone to Speaker's Corner, and we had actually spoken to the Dawah team there. We had spoken to Ali Dawah. We had spoken
Ali
to
Dawah, yeah, that was great. That was
yeah.
That was such a hoot.
Yeah, and later we also had dinner with them, and we really, really connected on some level, on like a very human level, and I thought that was really productive. Maybe not in long term. I didn't really expect much from Ali, but I think that is a route that I think there's a way there. There's light there, in my opinion. And some people might say, oh, there's no changing their minds, oh, they can never change. I believe in people. I believe that people are capable of change, especially when, their hearts are touched by something. And I want to believe that people who were ingrained as me, I was so ingrained in it. Like, I am so glad that ISIS was not around when I was a Salafi, because I don't know what I would have been like. I want to believe that people who are as ingrained as me are also capable of changing and coming out of that.
Okay. If you look back, what was, okay, there's two questions I have.
Okay.
The one thing is there anything in Islam that even today still gives you the shivers? Because what I hear a lot from ex-Muslims, and I'm just trying to confirm whether this is the case with you too, that when they think back, what still frightens them is this vision of hell. Do you also have that?
I've come to terms with that. I get that question a lot, actually.
Super. Well,
Did you want me to
congratulations, because a lot of
elaborate on that?
people. Sorry?
Did you want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah, please do, because I hear this from a lot of Muslims that they still have this, and this is still something that is ingrained somehow.
I had a long conversation with a Muslim user on Twitter a while back, and we were having a very civil conversation. And he had said, "What do you think of hellfire? Like, what if it's all real? You know, Allah is the real God, Muhammad is the real messenger, and you're actually going to hell." And I told him that I asked him, "Do you believe that Allah is a merciful creator?" And obviously he said yes. And I was like, if Allah is a merciful creator, he's not going to punish me simply because I think a different thing. And if he is going to punish me simply because I think a different way, despite the fact that I have only been good and all of my intentions have been pure, then he is not worthy of worship. And I would rather burn in hell with good people than be in paradise with a bunch of snobby pedophiles that judged everyone.
Checkmate. My goodness. That is excellent. Okay. Can you elaborate a bit more?
I find it so bizarre when people are wronged in real life by tyrants, by oppressors, by abusers, by narcissists, whatever you want to call them. They are so willing to take up arms against that person because of the wrong that they are doing, but they will bend to a God who is threatening to burn them in fire forever. I find it cowardly. I find it disgusting that you would just accept your fate like that. It doesn't matter if he created you. It's unjust what he's doing, and if he exists, then we should be fighting him. We should not be bending to him.
Brilliant. Why don't people react to this? Because it's quite funny that because what you are doing now is like, I have goosebumps now, because this is exactly the kind of thing that I would imagine should appeal to a human being, to a rational thinker, to anyone with, two brain cells. This is exactly the kind of reasoning that I would imagine should work with other people. And this is exactly what you're saying now. So amazing. I wish you could give me more of that. The last question that I have, and then I'll hand it over to Thunderous, because I've been hogging everything now. What is it, or is there anything that you have thought about in Islam that you are leaving today looking back?
What do you mean?
If you look back at Islam, you've been indoctrinated for close to 20 years. You've been, locked into a system. Is there anything that you can look back at and say, that was actually quite good and I miss it?
The only thing I miss about being a Muslim is that I miss my siblings. That is the only thing I miss. Because
okay, that's a personal level. That's not an ideology level.
On an ideology level, no, I really don't miss anything. Islam made me such a bitter, such a loveless person. I didn't know what love or happiness was before I left Islam. When I first felt love for the first time after I left Islam, I was so confused, and I was almost in despair. Like, I did not understand what I was feeling, and it made me incredibly sad. It made me incredibly sad, and none of my friends could understand what was going on. I couldn't understand what was going on. And it took me a while to realize that this is completely normal, and I had a completely unnormal life. So I don't miss anything about it. My life has only changed for the better since leaving Islam. The only downsides I found in what they've done.
Okay, I thought you were still talking. Okay, then welcome, Rob. Welcome. Do you have a question that you want to ask Faye? Because this is fantastic.
Good evening, Fay. I hope you're well. Sorry, I've been working, so I've missed everything else. You may have said all the good things already. Presumably, you've told your story. I've missed all of that, so I apologize.
Well, get ready for dessert.
So thank you again for joining. So I'll actually turn it over to Thunderous initially, because he may have some questions, because I've just come in, so I'll be listening. And I'm sure Stops has done a great job for the last hour of asking questions and you being able to explain some of your thoughts.
Hey, Faye.
Hi.
Hi. As you was growing up then, and the truth of Islam was dawning on you, were there any times in your life where you actually thought, I need to speak to somebody about this? Was there anybody?
I always spoke to people. I would call people on the TV, like the TV imams that would answer questions. I would ask questions at the mosque. I would ask my ustads at school. I would talk about it with my father. I would talk about it with my father's friends. The answers were just never satisfying. The answers were always, don't worry about qadar. You don't question qadar, you're going to end up being a qadari. Salafis are so good at answering questions and having answers for questions about practice. So questions about like how you clean yourself after the toilet, how to do ghusl after you have sex, how you eat, how you sleep, everything. They have all the answers for that. But when it comes to parts of faith, because giving a wrong answer may take you out of Islam, they're so hesitant to explore those ideas. So when I asked all these questions about qadr, like Allah knew that all these people were going to disbelieve, all these people were going to end up in fire, but he still made them. What the fuck is up with that? Nobody could give me an answer. It's just Allahu A'lam every single fucking time. And it really, really irked me. And it didn't matter who I asked. Every single person had the same answer. It was either, oh, we have free will and we can choose what we do, or it was, don't worry about it, Allah knows best.
But whilst growing up with that and then asking the questions, was there any sort of like temptation on your part to? Because the thing for me is that you're a woman doing this, and to be honest with you, I know what it's. I don't know what it's like as a woman. I just know how hard it is, even for a man to leave Islam. So for a woman, and I've often thought that women that leave Islam are amongst the bravest women in the world to do. It's not an easy thing to do when you consider that Islam, in certain countries you're executed for it. In other countries you're ostracized for it. And the ostracism can be almost like an amputation of the heart, because you're removed from the family, you're removed from the community, and so on and so forth. How did you feel as a woman leaving Islam, or was it just were you just very pragmatic about it, or were you self-conscious as a woman the impact this is going to have on you?
I did not think about it like that. I mean, I certainly did feel. I think as soon as I left Islam, my gender kind of became irrelevant to me. My struggle was my struggle. That was all there was to it. When I was a Muslim, I understood that there was a role I had to fill. There were specific things that I had to do. My family was extremely misogynistic, but I put up with it because they were my family and I had to get along with them. On the side of the ostracism, many people seem to think that I left Islam so that I could take off my hijab and I could have a boyfriend and all of those things. Despite the fact that Muslims do that anyway, so I don't know why I would have to leave Islam for that. But I think after I left Islam, the concept of me being a woman was very low on the priority list of my problems.
Did you feel if you was to give advice? I mean, one of the things that I was aware of when on my journey out of Islam, though I did mine at a very young age, I was sort of before 16. I was aware that Islam was not real, but retrospectively looking back in my 20s and then in my 30s, I'll look back and I'll think there are other Muslims that are like that know that Islam is not true. And it's not so much Islam that keeps people into the fold, it's the culture that keeps people in the fold, and probably
Yeah.
in some areas has a tighter grip on on the person, the family member, and the community than say the religion does. Would you say that that's true as well?
It's partly the culture. I think the culture is toxic in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it's also Islam. Islam has done a brilliant job of, first of all, converting people to it, because people are under the impression that it's a great idea because it's a completely regimented way of life, and then stopping them from leaving. So stopping them from progressing in the form of, forbidding bid'ah or innovations in the religion, preventing them from disobeying people who are above them. So for a woman, it would be her husband, her parents, her father, Muhammad, Allah. For a man, it would be Allah, his parents, and Muhammad. And apostasy is punishable by death, especially open apostasy. Islam has done a brilliant job of closing all the stops so that people it's very difficult for them to leave. And I've heard it way too many times that you can be an apostate, all you have to do is leave your area, as if that's some small feat to do.
When Stops asked a moment ago, so like some of the difficult things that you've had to face after leaving Islam, like some of the things of the belief. I think for me, when you know it's fake and a load of rubbish, that's fair enough. But how did you feel, sort of like doing the things that non-Muslims do? For instance, have you had your first bacon sandwich yet?
Yeah, of course. Bacon actually doesn't sit too well with me, so I don't eat much of it.
But was you not sort of like slightly hesitant? Was there not like a slight fear of, right, this is it, I'm about to put this in mouth, there's no going back after this?
Well, once I left Islam, I didn't feel guilty about anything. The one thing that I was very, very troubled by was probably taking off my hijab, because my hair had never seen the light of day, never. So that was something that I was very anxious about, because it was a very public thing to do. I feel like if you eat something, then you can always pass it off as something else. But once you take off something, a marker, like a discursive marker of who you are, like a hijab, it has a very different effect on you. And that was something that I was very sort of anxious about. Yeah, I was very, very self-conscious of it, because I felt like everyone was looking at me. But I kind of got over it. I'm okay with it now.
Are you still living in your local community, or have you moved away from there?
Oh no, I've moved away. I've moved well away.
Did you find it easy to move away? Because in effect, from moving from all the family and all the friends, was that an easy move to do, or did you find that because of how wrong Islam is, that was the motivation and the driving force that propelled you to move away?
I have literal PTSD about moving, and it wasn't a big deal when it happened, because by the point that I left my family completely, that was last year. The first time I had to leave anywhere was my father's house. That was in 2015, and from then I've had to move 5 times to different places. I was homeless for a little while, so leaving in October of last year, it was very easy for me to pick out all my essentials, throw them in a bag, and leave to this new place. It literally took a day to do that. Obviously, the emotional effects didn't wear off until like 2 or 3 weeks, because I was just so pained by it. But the physical element of it was almost second nature by that point.
Do you find that, how would you then, for those that are listening to the show that are Muslim, that are going through the doubt, or who are already aware that Islam is not real, it's fake, what advice would you give them on steps towards taking the stand that you've taken, particularly women? I mean, it's easy for me to say that to a man, but for a woman, what advice would you give?
For leaving Islam?
If they've already got doubts about Islam, or I mean, I'm being honest with you, Faye. When people say there are 1.5 billion Muslims on the planet, I think that there is probably a good proportion, maybe up to a third, that are actually going through the motions of being a Muslim, but in their heart they can't really believe that it's true. I don't think that you could honestly believe. I mean, I was less than 16, younger than 16, in the 80s when I figured out that Islam was not true. And I didn't have the access to the internet and social media and things like that. The only access I had to was the Quran and Quran school and the local community that you brought up in. That's all the exposure I had for me to conclude before I left home that Islam was false. Today we have social media, we have the internet, and various other forms of media where people can communicate their experiences or the things that they've learned. How or what motive or advice would you give to those women? And I ask you as a woman because you would know as a woman what's the best directions to take. What advice would you give?
I honestly don't know, because I don't want anyone to make any rash decisions, because I know how dangerous it is to leave Islam, and it's truly despicable that in the 21st century it is so dangerous to leave a religion. But I can't, in good faith, give one mode of advice to every single woman who is currently living within an Islamic household. It's just not doable, because it's all well and good for me to say, oh, you should be financially stable, but what if having a job and working is just simply not an option for you? What do you do then? Or I don't know. Most of the time when people ask me, what do? I have to know everything that's going on in their life so that I can sort of tailor, not even advice, just suggestions of what they could do. But as a general rule, if you live in the West and you have a job, I would say be financially stable first. Have all your papers and documents, so passport, birth certificate, all of those things. Have those within your grasp, because when I was a Muslim, all of those things were held by my father, and I had to take them secretly while I was still living with him.
So
have all your papers.
So you would say incrementally make a plan, have a date or a program or a plan, and then slowly build up to that plan.
Yeah, I when I was leaving my father's house, which at that point I was still a Muslim, but I was severely doubting Islam. But I knew I had to leave that place. I had built up a plan over several months of how to leave. And I think that that's necessary, but also I understand that not everyone has 7 months to figure out how to leave a place.
Do you think when you're watching the media at the moment, with your experience, I certainly know how I feel, when you're listening to politicians, the local communities, and the media, do you not feel a certain anxiety or a tension or a certain animosity or righteous indignation or even a belligerence towards the media that seems to be supporting Islam, when people like yourself and myself are well aware of the mindset and mentality of an agenda and how wrong or misled they are?
I think the media has a big problem of just trying to win brownie points with PC culture. I think that the media currently is playing at a popularity contest, and it really disgusts me. Like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be about ex-Muslim issues. Ahmadi mosques are shut up in Pakistan regularly. Regularly. And I don't understand why it's never covered. When New Zealand happened and it was covered, and it deserved to be covered, the whole world exploded. But imagine now we talk about, hijab laws in Iran and the protests that are going on there, and the injustices that are going on in Iran. Imagine talking about the several executions that have happened in Saudi Arabia because of where they executed liberal sheikhs, not even ex-Muslim sheikhs, just liberal ones. Imagine talking about Ahmadi mosques being shut up in in Pakistan, Ahmadis who consider themselves Muslims and should be considered Muslims, but are not by the Pakistani government.
Hmm. Did you think? Sorry, go on. Carry on.
I feel that the media views Islam as the brown man's religion, and they don't want to offend brown people, as they have been doing for, you know, I don't even know how long. They desperately don't want to come off as racist, so they've taken the stance of supporting Islam, and it's just simply toxic. It's simply toxic and biased towards something that is not helping humanity in the slightest.
When you're watching these things and you're looking at groups set up to protect those, like for female genital mutilation, honor killings, and things like that, do you not think that there should be an independent body set up for those that are wanting to leave Islam to give them the protection advice and the necessary support? There seems to be so much to protect Muslims, but there seems to be nothing to protect those that want to leave Islam. Do you think that there should be some kind of independent body set up for that?
There are some independent bodies here in the UK. That we have the Council of Ex-Muslims, we have Faith to Faithless, we have Humanists. In the United States, we have Ex-Muslims of North America, and slowly we are having other organizations. Currently in Norway, we have Ex-Muslims of Norway, we have Ex-Muslims of Netherlands, Ex-Muslims of South Africa was just set up, Ex-Muslims of Australia was just set up. We're slowly emerging. But the problem is that we're not, first of all, we're not taken seriously. And when we are, we're aligned with the far right, which we are not. We simply are not aligned with the far right. The far right give us platforms, but they essentially want to use us for their own means, which is why we try our best not to associate with them. But that is why I think that we are not given the status that we deserve. Mariam Namazi, for example, has done so much work in helping people, you know, escape countries, you know, helping ex-Muslims just regain their lives back, helping women, helping so many different people, and she has not been recognized. She has not been given an OBE, which she fully deserves. She's not been given Nobel Prize of any. She has not been given any kind of recognition for the truly great humanitarian work that she has done, but she's not taken seriously because she gives a fuck about social rejects from brown families.
That was the point I wanted to lead to, that those who have helped those in the community have not been recognized socially in any kind of forum at all. And it seems that the voice of the Muslim far out, how can I say, truth speech to Islam is hate speech. Telling the facts is hate speech. I mean, we see that all too often. I think the panelists on this show, we've had that sort of comment many a time, that with reference to Islam, when you make a comment, you're a hate monger, you're a bigot, you're an Islamophobe, so on and so forth. And the counter that in the community or in the media or nationally is that anybody that's trying to defend the situation of an ex-Muslim, there seems to be a cooperation of silence there. So I totally agree with you on that point. I think my last question would be as well, how much racism did you experience within the Muslim community, that is Muslim on Muslim racism?
Just to address something that you said before, I will scream from dusk till dawn for Muslims to believe whatever they want to believe. I will scream for their right to believe in Islam. I only ask the same. I only ask the same right, that Muslims allow us to believe whatever we want to believe without the threat of ostracism, without the threat of disowning, without the threat of honor violence, without the threat of murder in the name of Islam. That is all we ask. And I think that it is ridiculous that criticizing Islam is considered hate speech.
But did you not think that, with respect to that, but when you are being critical of Islam, when you are leaving Islam and there's a death penalty, that is just Islam, though. That is pure Islam. And when we get those threats and when those situations do arise, for me, it's a testimony of that's Islam. What did you expect? If Muhammad was alive now, he'd be supporting the actions of these people. In fact, he'll be condemning the Muslims that are not supporting the actions of killing critics of Islam or killing apostates.
That is all well and good, and I agree that it is part of Islam. But I believe that Muslims are better than Islam.
True,
Most
but then they
Muslims
won't be
are.
Muslims, then, will they? That's the
Sorry?
thing. That's the thing, though. Is if they're better than Islam, then they're not Muslims.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that if Muslims want to keep practicing Islam, want their freedom to practice whatever they want, they need to practice freedom for everyone to believe whatever they want.
Well, my last question then is, as I've said, how much racism, Muslim on Muslim racism, did you experience in the community?
I not a lot. I've seen it recently where a lot of Muslims will be like, "Oh, it's always the Bengalis that leave Islam." I haven't met too many Bengali ex-Muslims, if I'm completely honest. I've met a lot of Pakistanis, I've met a lot of Iranians, I've met a lot of Arabs. I have not met a lot of Bengalis, but whenever I make a video or whenever I make a tweet, I always get this consistent comment of, "Oh, it's always the Bengalis that fuck it up for Islam." And I don't know where that's coming from. Bengalis, as far as I'm aware, they're either Jamatis or they are liberal. So I'm not entirely sure where that is coming from, but I've experienced very marginal racism. It's not. I haven't experienced extreme racism on the part of Muslims.
What about when you was growing up as a Muslim? Did you not find that the Pakistani Muslims held you as low regard, and like the African Muslims were held as low regard, and the Arab Muslims was held in high regard? Did you not sort of like see the racism manifest itself in that arena?
I certainly did see this strange worship of Arabs.
Yeah.
But I did not see, any racism coming from Pakistanis or North Africans towards me for, being Bengali.
Okay. I think that's. Thank you, Faye, for being candid, and thank you for asking my questions, and giving me the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you.
Hey, Faye, you might have answered this before, but and if you have, then or stops. I don't know if the question was asked. What was it that sort of moved you out of Islam to become an ex-Muslim? If you've answered that already, I'll listen back to that. If not, then I'd be keen to hear that.
That was the key question. Come on.
Okay, good. All right. So you have answered it already. Okay, fair enough. In that case, I've been listening in. It's been obviously a pleasure just for the time that I've been here listening to you. So
I mean,
yeah, I'm going to hand.
To put it briefly, just to put it briefly, I did not want to worship a cruel god. That is why I left Islam.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I think reading the Quran, I think you can see that it's certainly he's certainly not a benevolent God, unless you're going to cherry pick or reinterpret virtually every verse you read. So
no,
that's
absolutely.
good.
And what's ironic is that he constantly calls himself the most merciful and the most gracious, when he's the complete opposite of that.
Yes, we read it every week. So every Friday we're reading the Quran, and you've been a welcome change from that over the last few months. But we're in Surah 3 at the moment, and that comes up regularly. And so if you ever want to join us, where we go through the verses, we try and make sense of it. We look at some of the tafsirs. We sometimes bring in Muslim guests. There was in fact a guest who wanted to come and chat to you here now. I think it's getting a bit late for that, but we'll have him on again next week. Then feel free to come by and join us, or pop in the comments or anything like that. But it's been a pleasure, and I'm going to head back to Stops, who's hosting for the night. So thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Faye, if you look back, what is the typical reaction you get when you speak to, let's say, believing Muslims? Is it just fear? Is it panic, or is it arrogance?
In person or online?
Person.
In person, I think I'm quite an affable person, and I think that people who meet me for the first time, regardless of what they believe, I'm a very approachable person, and I'm very good at building rapport with people. So when I introduce them to this idea that I'm not a Muslim anymore, if they are Muslim and I'm talking to them about it, and they ask me why, I tell them quite frankly why. And in the last few months, I've made quite a great number of Muslim friends, and it's really surprising to me that they're just so accepting of me. And they're not practicing Muslims; they're just, everyday, your average, you know, I guess you'd call it a moderate Muslim. And they've always, the way they talk to me, and even if, like, we had a discussion today about religion, we were talking about God, and they made a point about saying how everyone blames everything on God, but look at what the governments are doing. And I said, okay, I can accept that governments are corrupt, but governments didn't create us. God created us. And she kind of recoiled and was like, wait, that's true. So I do think that in person, the reactions that I've had from, the Muslims that I've made friends with, and they're very great friends. We've gone drinking, we've gone dancing. They're amazing friends. The rapport that I've built with them is actually quite positive, and I think that we're able to talk about these issues, and I'm able to explain to them that, look, this is where I came from. I'm not saying that this is how you live or the blinkers that you have in your life, but this is what I had, and it was completely toxic for me, and I am never going back to it. And they are fully understanding of that, and they have no desire to tell me that I need to get back to it. But online, I think the online world, because we're not able to track people or really humanize them in any way, it brings out the worst of people. And I try to be as genuine as I can online. I try to be as open as I can. I don't script any of my videos. I don't pre-think any of my tweets. Everything you see from me is coming straight out of my brain with no filter. And even then, I feel as though people want to find the chinks or the things that I've contrived in any of my words, when really it's just what I'm thinking.
Okay. But now, if you take now, the thing is that people tell me that there's some videos out which I haven't seen yet with you in Speaker's Corner, and I've just seen 5 minutes with Armin and with Ali Dawa.
It's on Ali Dawa's channel.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Okay, I've just given away that I'm not a subscriber to Ali Dawa.
Well, now, it's on his channel. It was really nice of him to upload our conversation, because I think I did really well and he did not.
Okay, then I need to go and watch this. Now, if you compare the two sides, was there a difference when you were talking to him in person in the park, in front of his audience? Was he behaving differently at that moment in time than later on when you said you went and had dinner with them?
Oh, no. There was a stark contrast between how he is online compared to how he is in person. In person, I don't think he expected to hear that I was a normal human. For the first time, he looked at me. Well, he didn't actually look at me, but he talked to me as if I was a human being with feelings and thoughts and was capable of, intelligence. Whereas online, he's always treated me like a gimmick. And when I spoke to him, I really feel as though I reached him to an extent. And I don't know if that carried. I don't know if he still feels like that. But while I was there, and while I had that one video clip of me talking to him at then dinner, and also talking to him while we were on our way to dinner, I really feel as though I was able to talk to him like a person. I told him that I feel as though that the ex-Muslim community and the Muslim community have needed to have this discussion for such a long time, and we've had these preconceived notions about each other, and that's prevented us from talking for so long. And he fully understood that, and I think that is a gateway of bridging some kind of understanding, some kind of communication between the two communities, and stopping this just this horrible culture of disowning children and beating them, and even going as far as killing them.
And that's the whole sad part. Do you in any way associate with Awesome Without Allah?
Yeah, I did quite a few videos about it.
Okay, because I like all these joint efforts. I loved it when you spoke about Mariam Namazi, when she had this initiative. I can't remember what it was called again. Not without me, not me too. There was an initiative that she had where she collected a whole bunch of ex-Muslims who all used the same hashtag. And then they came across and said, listen, I'm not a bad person. I'm just an ex-Muslim. And that was brilliant. I loved it. I thought this was so brilliant. Okay, there are 3 questions that I still have on the list here, which I took now from the chat. Actually, no, one is from me, a personal one. If you go into stories, if you go back into I don't know, into your childhood or something, you must have come across the figure of Khidr, the green one, right?
Yeah, that was
Now,
actually one of my favorite stories.
It is for a lot of Muslims, and it actually, if you look at it as a fairy tale, it's actually quite nice. It's just that it's very brutal in its morality. Did you ever get this only as a fairy tale with positive impact, or did you see underneath and behind it to see how despicable this actually is?
I think the story of Khidr, when I was younger, I used to think it was this moralistic story because I like Musa as a character in the Quran. I think that his
Right.
story is really interesting. He's
Yeah.
if it I would never admit this as a Muslim, but Musa is actually my favorite prophet. I think he's the greatest prophet of all time, according to the Quran. But in terms of Khidr, I liked the story because Musa was just curious about what this guy was doing, and he had such a adverse reaction to what he was going around doing. And I mean, I was kind of disappointed he didn't question it. And we're talking about a guy who literally slapped death and knocked his eye out, and he doesn't question this guy who's like killing a kid in front of him. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So what I liked about the story was that Musa was interested in this person and what he was doing. I never had like a very keen interest in Khidr, and looking back, he just seems really sadistic, know-it-all kind of person, and just I don't know. He just seems like very self-righteous. Not for me. I didn't like him.
Exactly, and this is why I'm curious how you, as a Muslim, looks at this and then thinks back of the story, and after a while, you surely must realize there's something wrong with the story. Whereas when you're a Muslim, you probably don't. And this is why I'm quite curious about the difference in the 2 eras, if as it were.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I think as a Muslim, I tried not to question too much, but as an ex-Muslim, I have that freedom. I have that
Don't
freedom
ask
now
questions
to
where you don't like the answer. Maybe you don't like the answers.
Yeah.
Did you ever listen to Zakir Naik?
Yes, definitely.
What did you think of him
Incessantly.
in your heydays?
I listened to him so much that all of my thoughts were narrated in that fucking accent.
But rather ask a good question, huh?
I am medical doctor.
I thought for a time, before I was exposed to other people talking about him, I thought that he was quite brilliant. I know better now. I think that his whole thing is a little ridiculous. His money laundering scam, that whole thing, ridiculous. The fact that he pays people to be in the audience and clap, ridiculous. That he pays people to convert, ridiculous. Like, it's just a big scam.
And is that obvious?
And also the fact that most of the audience don't understand the language that he's speaking in, and it's almost like they have dummy cards telling them when to clap and when to roar whenever he starts going on one of his speeches, and when he starts reciting the holy text, the chapter and the verses, and they spontaneously clap. It just seems a bit. This is all a bit staged here.
It is.
Oh.
I didn't know it was that obvious that it was out that he actually pays people. I didn't know that this was a fact.
Yeah, he did actually do that.
Wow. I've
which
got
is
a question here
pathetic.
from our Safari man. If you if you are you aware of Christian Prince?
Not very.
Oh, okay, because now then it doesn't make sense, because this is an interesting question, actually. If you think of the way that Christian Prince talks to Muslims, now he has this dismissive, very and highly arrogant way of talking to Muslims. Now, it's actually, I mean, if you question him, he's actually quite weak. But when it comes to Islam, he's unbeatable. I have so much respect for him, because what he picks from, from other people, and what he picks from out of Islam, from out of the Hadith, from out of the Quran, and then confronts the people picking up from their brain what they think about this. It's amazing. Okay, there's really brilliant stuff there at times, and this is why I'm wondering what a Muslim will actually think of what this Christian Prince attitude is. But if you don't know him, it doesn't matter.
Well,
But if you
I
want,
don't want to judge him without having seen any of his content, but
no,
generally
it's
speaking,
entertainment. It's sheer
the way that-
entertainment. I sometimes listen to it. When you're sitting on a plane or in a train or something, you do 1 hour of Christian Prince, and you start giggling because it's so funny.
Okay.
The last question I have: what about Muslims who say that Salafism is so extreme that it's no wonder people leave it?
I agree with that.
Okay.
It's kind of ridiculous to live a 7th century life in the 21st century. It makes sense that people leave it. But I also think that people who kind of double down on it because they've been doing it for too long and they feel like leaving it now would just mean their life is meaningless, which is exactly how I felt. I think that it's very important to reach out to those people. I think it's really, really important, because the way that they are living is toxic, and it can only get more toxic. It doesn't get better.
Okay, I am through with my questions. What I would love for you to do is elaborate, because you were so brilliant. What you came with when you said, do you want me to elaborate a bit? And what then came, and I'm amazed that you are so young, that you are so mature, that you have all these views. It's actually quite amazing. And this is why I would love for you to just, elaborate a little bit on whatever comes to mind that you would think that is important for other people to know.
I think the place that I'm at right now, I did my Awesome Without Allah video, and I had gone in a more creative direction than the rest of my ex-Muslim friends. I feel like most of my ex-Muslim friends kind of just sat in front of a camera and made a list and, elaborated a little bit on how their lives are better. But I had personally decided to make a dua to Allah and tell him exactly why it was that I left Islam and why my life was better. And the entire Muslim Twitter really didn't like the fact that I did that. I got about 500 likes on the actual tweet, but I got about 70,000 views. And I don't even know how many quote tweets and comments from Muslims telling me that I'm a horrible person and that I've already accepted that Allah exists because I was supplicating him, and that what was the other one? The other one, there were the normal death threats, of course, and then it was just personal attacks about my appearance. I think it really drove home the points that I was trying to make, that Islam just makes you this horrible, judgmental person.
Okay.
I want to personally thank those Muslims for proving doing my job for me.
Excellent. Yeah, exactly.
But I had done that, and I was reflecting on it a little bit. And I really do think that leaving Islam has made me a kinder, more empathetic person. It's made me care about other people, despite the fact that I have more need to be concerned for myself than ever. Despite that fact, I'm more empathetic now towards other people than I've ever been. And I love that I'm like that. I'm love that I was able to come out of a very selfish mentality of I need to save myself. I just need to save myself, and I've made it. To I'm just a human being, and all my struggles are just as difficult as everyone else's. You know, when I cry about, you know, not being able to have a McDonald's at 12 in the evening, I'm pretty sure that there are people out there who feel the same thing. You know, people are people, and I need to empathize with that. And I truly believe, I think a lot of people disagree with me on this. I know for a fact that some of my ex-Muslim friends disagree with me on this, but I truly believe that the way forward in normalizing this experience of leaving a religion has to come through acts of kindness, because I know for a fact that it was kindness that brought me out of Islam. It was people, you know, taking the time to sit down and tell me that homosexuality was not a choice, you know, to sit down and tell me that stoning people really wasn't okay, and that that was an extremely painful experience to go through simply for committing adultery or being gay, or what was the other thing that you could be stoned for? I've forgotten. But it
apostasy, adultery, and
apostasy isn't something you can be stoned for, I don't think. But homosexuality and adultery is, if you're committing corruption in the land, you can have your hands and feet cut off from the opposite sides. If you're
well, yeah, but in Pakistan, for example, you can be stoned for blasphemy.
I don't think
it's the way that they decide how to do it. There's no law, there's no real fiqh for this, but this is just how they come out and do it.
Yeah, but my point was that people took the time, and I'm still very good friends with these people. People took the time to, you know, speak to me despite my ignorance, and treat me with kindness, and treat me with pity and sympathy, because they understood that I was indoctrinated. And I do think that we just come from a place of aggression. Aggression has its place. I'm not saying that we can't be aggressive with our stances, but strictly being aggressive, I feel as though will push individuals away. I think as a general rule, we have to be aggressive against Islam and Islamic principles. But when it comes to individuals and people, we have to treat them with kindness simply because they are people. And that is what I want to continue doing moving forward.
Where are your videos? Where is this video that you were talking about?
It's on my channel, Fay the Most Gracious. It's called...
okay, then I will find it.
Yeah.
Because you gave me this title on the on Facebook, so I will be able to link it in in the description. Then what I'll do is I'll add this later. I hope I can. I think I can, and then I'll just find your YouTube channel and then just add so people, if they want to watch this, then they can do this. And I don't want people, because Beach just made an interesting comment that you have boobs, get over it. So you know. So apparently there is something that people object to, which had to do with your physical appearance.
If you did watch, if you do end up watching Ali Dawah's video, he actually blurs out my chest entirely, and I found that really, really funny. I actually saved the screenshot. It's one of my prized possessions. I'm thinking of printing it out and sticking it somewhere in my room where I do my videos. I loved it. I thought it was so funny. I actually tweeted at him and I said that, you know, this is a great picture of us. Thank you for doing that. I thought it was really funny, but so many of my ex-Muslim friends were so outraged, and I didn't really get it, why they were outraged, as if they didn't know that he was going to do something like that.
I've posted the link to Fay's channel.
Okay.
I'll post it again.
Yeah, I got it. I copied it and I'll put it into the description as well.
Oh, thank you.
No, because you know, whatever you're saying, it makes so much sense, and yet I love this thing that you bring up the little, you know, you haven't lost your sense of humor. You say that you are bitter, and yet you come across as somebody who's very positive, as somebody who can make fun of Ali Dawah's looks and things like that. Who you make fun of yourself. You don't take yourself seriously, and yet you are still very serious in a serious topic, bringing across the right things to say at that moment. And that is what I find so fascinating. I wish more people, you know, had the ability. I, at your age, did not have the ability. Let me tell you that much. So there's a lot that other people can learn from you, and I think there's a lot of things that people can take home and appreciate and say, well, listen, if I do that, let me think about that. Let me think about what Fay just said. Am I doing the right thing, especially when it comes to Muslims? So yeah. So I'm very happy about what you contributed tonight.
I just wanted to make a small comment. I think that it's really important to have a good balance. I think that many ex-Muslims have a very angry sort of way of talking about Islam, and that's fine. If that's your style, that's your style. I just don't see a reason for continuing to be angry. I'm not in it anymore. I'm certainly angry about certain things like my family and how they've treated me. I'm going to be angry about that. I think that's perfectly normal. But at the end of the day, it was an idea that I bought into and then left. And I just don't feel like I don't feel cheated. I think that it was definitely a necessary thing, like in terms of the way that I was raised. I didn't really see it going any other way. I've always been a 0 to 100 person. I've been an all or nothing person. I think that it was necessary for me to go through that arc and then come out the other side. And I don't see the reason to be, anything but, amused by it. We're people, we do stupid things. We should laugh about it.
I think just on the side of what you're saying there about you don't see why you should be. I'll be honest, I'm very belligerent towards Islam. Even 35 years later after leaving it, I have a very proactive belligerence towards it. I think as human beings we're all different and we all have our wounds, as it were. But when you've come from Islam, it's not one of those things that you can here's a samosa. Now you understand what Islam and Asian culture is like. It doesn't quite work like that. You really have to come from it to understand it. But from myself, when you've come away from it, you're coming away from more than just a religion. You're coming away from a mentality, an ideology, a way of life that it's not like coming away from say Christianity or Judaism, where you're coming away from something that you could, for argument's sake, you could say it damages people, but it doesn't damage people to the extent that Islam does. It doesn't. They don't have their arranged marriages. Sorry, go on.
I understand that. I fully understand that. However, when I was a Muslim, I was constantly angry and I was constantly guilty. I was constantly upset. And I just don't feel that way anymore. I just don't. I'm happy, and I want to be happy. That's it.
Yeah, so I'm a happy person. Don't worry about it. I'm a happy person. It's just that when it's almost like I go into belligerence mode, right then I'm ready for war now because we're going to be talking about Islam, or I'm going to speak to a Muslim today, or the Islam is going to be mentioned today, or if I'm watching the news and I'm seeing Islam being protected by politics, media, and law, like for instance the grooming gangs in Rochdale, for instance, and when I see and hear things like Tommy Robinson having an opinion that's based on reality, being arrested and incarcerated for it, it brings out a very proactive indignation within me that can be manifest incorrectly, but it's there. And I think that, and I won't be the only one that has that disposition. There'll be plenty of other male and female, probably because you said something about being married to a man that you didn't choose, that that wasn't what you wanted, that you're going to be married to a stranger that you never knew. You'll have ended up having children with him, a man that you didn't want to be married to, having children with a man you didn't want. But you and I know, walking away from that has been going on, that is going on, and that will be going on. So it's more than just walking away from the religion and what Muhammad did. It's knowing what you're walking away from, and that you're walking away to freedom away from that, but you're leaving so much pain and suffering behind you that for me, I find it intolerable, because I know I've seen with my own eyes what takes place. When you're saying that how your father treated you, I know how other men, Pakistani men, have treated their daughters. well, Muhammad himself said that they're stupid. If a donkey or a dog or a woman walks in front of a man while he's praying, he's got to start his prayer again. So that shows you the little role that a woman has. She's nothing more than an incubator. Let's be honest. That's all you are. If you're a Muslim woman, you're just an incubator. You can dress it up as much as you like, but that's what you are. But you and I both know we're walking away from that plus more. So for me, it feeds within me a certain rage, and to a certain extent, I'm grateful, like many men or women, that I've got it, because it keeps me going. If I lost it, then I would say for me, then it will reflect as a problem within me that I don't have fire or zeal anymore towards what I know is monumentally wrong in our communities.
I have fire, just not towards people.
Oh, I don't.
And
It's towards the ideology. I hate the ideology. Oh, so when I see people like Ali Dawah, Hamza Zortzis, and the like defending this ideology, defending what's happening in their own community, and don't tell me that these people don't know what's going on in the community. You and I both know what's going on. It's obvious when you're inside the community. So they're not just defending Islam, this holy book and this holy prophet that they claim. They're defending what takes place in the community as well. It's what I call community responsibility. You're a part of it by knowing it. So if you're defending Islam, you're defending everything that goes on within the community as well. And it's that I hate. So I hate not just the ideology. But if you're going to get up and defend it, let's go toe to toe, mate. I'll have some of that.
fair enough. Fair enough. All I'm saying is that the boundaries with which I operate in is that I try not to make judgments. I hear the person out, and then they hear me out. Kindness is kindness.
Talking about hearing out, what do you think about people who are discussing hijab, niqab, burqa, and all these things? Do you think there should be a ban, or should you hear people out and let them wear what they want?
I can say for a fact that I started wearing niqab because it was going to be banned in the UK. I think that the hijab and the niqab are currently less religious symbols than they are identity symbols.
Yeah.
And
I call them political.
Identity politics is a really big thing. So if the hijab or the niqab were to be banned, we'd see a spike in radicalism because people regard these things as identity symbols, not so much as religious symbols.
Okay.
In my opinion, I think that hijab as a concept, I completely disagree with it. I think it's misogynistic, and I don't agree with children being put in hijabs at all. But I think that women should be able to choose what they want to wear. I think that niqab should be banned in courts, for security reasons at airports, and I had no problem with that as a Muslim either. And I still hold the opinion that they should be regulated for security reasons. But at the end of the day, women should be able to choose what they wear. And I think that the moment that we stop regarding pieces of cloth as so important, because it's literally the stupidest thing in the world, it will become less serious. We need to stop giving them so much importance when they have so little importance.
Okay. But the thing is that I say the hijab literally means a veil. It's a separation. It's a curtain. And this is the point where I say that a hijab veils the female off from the rest of the world, from any normal human interaction. And that is why I personally, I can't handle it. For me, it's horrible.
I agree. I completely agree. However, we don't know which individuals are choosing and which individuals aren't.
And that's the whole difficulty. That's why I'm actually in favor to say, all right, it gives a woman who doesn't want to but has to the excuse of being able to say no. Because I mean, I've lived in Eastern countries, in Muslim countries, for most of my life, and so I know how many women don't want to wear this, and that is why I maintain it's the most practical solution to prohibit it, and the women who will want to wear it will find a different way of separating themselves from society. So this is my personal take on this.
But you don't think that those women who are forced to wear it will be further isolated because it is a patriarchal society?
Well, this is the point. If they are being told, well, you're not allowed to, they can then go back to their patriarch and say, listen, fuck you, I'm not allowed to. So it's not up
Well,
to you to take a decision, because we're living in a society where it's not allowed to do that. So I'm going to take it off.
I'm not sure that that's how patriarchy works. I know for a fact that when I was going through wanting to take off the hijab, I certainly could not say that to my female family members, let alone to my male family members. When you live in a patriarchal society, not only are you bound to live by these rules, you also can't fight against them because you don't have the right. You don't have the right to fight against them because your words don't have power. So when you're in a country, when you're in a family, first of all, that insists that you wear a certain thing because you are a woman and because you are, you are a lustful item to men, you have to wear this thing, and then the country goes in heads and bans that item, what is going to happen is that these families are going to further isolate their daughters, or they're going to move to places where they can wear the hijab, and usually those places aren't the safest places for women.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So I don't think that it's a practical solution to ban it. I think that actions to ban specific items of clothing, ban specific items of religious freedom, I think that spikes radicalism. I think that, limitations on freedom of speech, the fact that we have so many white nationalists now is because they're not allowed to talk about how racist they are. And I think that if people were open about this and were allowed to talk about it, we would have less, need for these subcultures to be rising and gaining prominence and, having platforms and being taken seriously. I think that the solution to this is just simply allowing the individual to be an individual. And that is the only way I see it, honestly.
Do you think sometimes the reason why many Muslim women speak up about the hijab and the niqab is because this is their only opportunity in their life to actually have a voice and have an opinion? So they take it because this is the one time in their life they can be heard.
I do think so. I completely agree with that. I think that Muslim women talk about Muslim women's issues because it's the only thing that they will be taken seriously on.
Yeah, and because it's in defense of Islam and it supports Islam, this is a moment. Yeah.
And you get a lot of those likes and retweets which normally hijabi girls won't get because they're hijabi girls.
I just know in Tehran in the old days, there were maybe 5% of the girls who walked around in a chador. There were families where they said, well, if you go out, you need to wear this. And I remember a girl leaving the house, and then as soon as she was around the corner, she would wrap everything up, put it into a handbag, and then get into the car and we drive off. But she would have to be seen leaving the house with the chador. And this was the thing, and that's it. Then in what Ataturk did in Turkey, for example, he simply banned the stuff, and it worked. So I don't know how that works. There's more and more countries now banning this. So it will be interesting to see how that pans out.
As long as they ban it in a situation where there's going to be a fire. Remember a few years ago, we spoke about that situation in Saudi Arabia, where the firemen wouldn't go into the burning school because the girls weren't wearing their hijab, so 18 girls died in the fire.
Yeah.
So, if anybody wants to defend the wearing of the hijab, I always think, well, technically speaking, you're an accessory after the fact, because if the niqab or the hijab means that much to you, 18 children died for not wearing it because the firemen wouldn't go in to rescue them.
Well, in Saudi Arabia, it's different because people don't have the choice to wear it. They have to wear it.
Yeah, but they're forcing that issue in the Western world, in a democratic Western world, by making all their political statements. People can dress it up with as much word salad as they like, but if you're going to defend the wearing of it, then by implication, you're going along with what's taking place in Saudi Arabia as far as the concerned.
No, I deeply disagree. Here in the UK, women do not have to wear the hijab. It's only within families that women are forced to wear it. And I'm
No.
not in defense of in the slightest, but there are also women here in the UK that want to wear it, and I think that they should be able to.
Yeah, I have a different opinion on that.
But Faye, what would happen, do you think, if Saudi Arabia were to ban hijab or all veiling?
Sorry?
What do you think would happen if Saudi Arabia would ban all veiling?
All veiling? I don't know what would happen. I feel like many people would be housebound, and a lot of other people would just run around outside without veils. I don't know.
A mass rise in rape, and then they turn around and say, "This is what happens when you invite the Western culture into Saudi Arabia."
No, but this, you know, it's a thought experiment, you know, just to think about what would happen if.
All I can say is from experience, the reason why I started wearing the niqab, which was, you know, the most extreme thing that I could do as an 11-year-old girl, is because Jack Straw was trying to get it banned here.
So you were a rebel.
I was always a rebel.
It's nice. Okay, guys, we've had 2 hours, and I'm highly appreciative of Faye being here, but I don't want to abuse it, and I'd love to have her back. So, is there anything that anybody wants to know? Otherwise, we're going to call it a day, and then we'll just take a break, and we'll do the regular Quran reading next week, and then maybe Faye can join us again later on in the month or next month or something like this, because it's highly fascinating the way that you talk about Islam. I find it highly educating, the way that you touch everything, the way that you approach this. I think this is a very nice way of going around it, because it shows the empathy, and it shows the way that you understand. You have an understanding for the feeling of the people who are locked in the system. And this is what I find so amazing.
I think that taking to like close out the discussion, I think that taking a very hardline stance on Islam is completely wrong. Muslims aren't going to listen to that. Your audience is not going to be Muslims. It's just going to be people who already agree with you. I think that talking about Islam to some degree has to be started by, you know, just having these questions that inspire doubt. You know, why is God like this? Why did Muhammad do that? Why are we here? Like, what is our actual existence? Is it just to bow down to a creator simply because he made us? I think that there is a softer approach that needs to be, especially with people who feel like they're trapped. They're only Muslim because they're trapped, and are defending it because they're in denial of the fact that they are trapped. I think there is a way of going about it that isn't hardline and aggressive. And you know, I've seen it work to some extent, and you know, other times I've seen people, you know, agree to disagree. It's never backfired on me, is all I'm saying. And I like that.
Yes, and it's highly appreciated, I think. Okay, I see no more questions. Anything, Rob, you want to say something?
No, I just again like to thank Faye for coming on as a guest. Been fabulous to listen and chat to her.
Thank you.
Great. So I'm hoping that you will be back. At the end of the show, we always do a hadith of the week, and then we will just say our bye-byes. This week it's going to be by Muhammad, and this is in several narrations of Sahih Bukhari. Narrated, Anas bin Malik, Allah's messenger, said, "You should listen to and obey your imam, even if he was an Ethiopian black slave whose head looks like a raisin."
Yeah, I've heard that one. That's a bad one.
Everybody has heard about this. Here you heard it on the Gin and Tonic show, and it's in volume book 89, 256, volume 1, book 11, number 662. So there's multiple sources for this. So I think it's attested in multiple places. So there you go.
And it'll be going on the Court of Human Rights, the Islamic Court of Human Rights as well, won't it?
Yes. Exactly. Faye, thank you very much. Much appreciated. And I really hope, I mean, the way that it works, you can always pop in or say, listen, today I've got a spare, half an hour. I just want to say hi. Either you come to the Gin and Tonic Show live show where it's in the chat and just say, listen, hi guys, I'm here if you want to have a chat. Or you just go to Facebook and say, listen, tonight I've got half an hour. I've got something I'd like to tell you or something new or whatever. Then you just, you're always welcome. Super stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Good night. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Good night.
Night.